What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. The year 2017 has been a very interesting year for the racing games genre, and what I'm going to do today is take some time out just to summarize a few good points and a few bad points of some of the racing games that I've actually covered on the channel thus far. So the games we're going to be talking about today are going to be Need For Speed Payback, Gran Turismo Sport, Forza Motorsport 7 and Project Cars 2. Now, I'm well aware that there have been more racing games than this that have actually been released this year, but I think it would be very unfair and quite unprofessional for me to start talking about good and bad points of games I've not actually played. So, as I said, few good points, few bad points. Starting things off with Need For Speed Payback. Now, Need For Speed Payback is a game that a lot of you will know I covered extensively in the run up to launch. I've done all sorts of concept videos, discussion videos, opinionated based stuff, news, information drops, and it was the game that I had the most high hopes for going into this year. Considering as this is a channel that actually started off back when Need For Speed 2015 came out, it's a game that has always been close to my heart. When it comes to Need For Speed Payback, one of the things that stuck out as a positive point for me was the diversity of the car list. 2015 was a decent game, but in terms of the actual cars that we had on offer, we didn't have much choice. So I'm not actually talking about the amount of cars, I'm talking about the variation. I like classic muscle cars. I may be from the UK, but I've got a huge appreciation for them, and there was hardly any in Need For Speed 2015. Not just that, but there was also a lack of hatchbacks, and all in all, the actual car list itself just felt very skewed, very unbalanced, if you will. With Payback, if you look at this year's car list, you've got all sorts of different cars. You've got sedans, you've got coupes, or coupes as we call them here in the UK. You've got SUVs, you've got pickup trucks, you've got hatchbacks, you've got classic muscle, you've got modern muscle, you've got pretty much something for everybody, hypercars, supercars. And I think for me personally, that is one of the things that I was looking for from the actual game itself. We talk about physics a lot, we talk about graphics, we talk about storylines, but the actual car list itself, a diverse and balanced car list is important, because at the end of the day, you've got different fans of different types of cars, and if you're going to push out a game which is going to be as far reaching as Need For Speed always is, you've got to make sure that you cover every single type of audience that you've got who are locked into your brand. So in terms of car list diversity, I feel this is a very positive point. Improved customization options. Now, the customization in Need For Speed Payback is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it's definitely a step up from what we had in Need For Speed 2015. As you all know, if you played the game, you would see that there were loads and loads of situations where, you know, you get to a certain car and you would find either no parts whatsoever or just one or two pathetic little add-ons that you can assign as part of an aftermarket body modification. Now, there are a lot of people that like to reference Underground 2 and like to reference games from that era as being better in terms of customization options. The truth is though, they were not, okay? What they were doing was they were using 4 or 5 or 6 different types of parts for every single car. So for example, you might have a spoiler called Razor, or you might have a hood called Shark's Fin or something stupid like that. And yes, every single car would have 5 or 6 options, but they were the same 5 or 6 options for every single car, which is a very key point that a lot of people don't take into consideration. With Payback, not only have you got more customization options available in comparison to what you had in 2015, but they are all individually made for each individual car, including real life manufacturer parts as well. As I said, it's not perfect. There are still bits and pieces that need to be worked on, but it was definitely a step up and definitely a step in the right direction. So I'm happy with that. Also, underglow neons and tire smoke and all those bits and pieces as well that were great add-ons to have, great additions and very much welcome. The next good point from Need For Speed Payback I'd like to touch on is the day-night cycle. Now, I was one of the most vocal people when it came to criticizing Need For Speed 2015 for not having a day cycle. Now, I fully understand when you talk about underground street racing, you want to create a vibe of murkiness, of mystery, of this is something we shouldn't be doing in the daylight type thing, and I agree with that for the most part. The problem was the ambient lighting within the game wasn't what I would call friendly, put it that way. Those of you who like to design wraps and whatnot, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You design a fantastic looking wrap in the garage where it's all nice and light and beautiful. You take your car out into the open world and find that you can barely see any design on your car whatsoever. So by adding daylight into the game, what you've done is you've given us the ability to not only see the world in a different light, excuse the pun, but also appreciate the beauty of the most important part of the game, which is the cars. So once again, thank you Ghost, and well done for that. Now, moving on to the bad points of Need for Speed Payback. And look, guys, I know there's probably a lot more than this, but for the sake of time, I need to keep it down to 3. The upgrade system. I think we can all universally agree that if you had the opportunity to swap a V6 for a V8 against the possibility of trading in what looks like some sort of Pokemon upgrade card, you would choose the first option. And I think where Need for Speed Payback kind of started to hit problems was with the new card system, the speed cards, whatever you want to call them. It's just something that people just don't like it. It's as simple as that. Doesn't really divide opinion. It's a universal thing, because at the end of the day, it kind of feels too random. You know, when you go to a part shop in real life to, you know, make changes to your car, you don't go in there thinking to yourself, I'm going to walk in and I'm going to pick a part out from a random loot box. No, you know exactly what you want, because that's what you're paying for. And I think while I like to praise games and developers for trying to be different, for trying to be unique, I think that this is something that I would like to see disappear. I think many other people would like to see disappear, and I think this is a case of where if it's not broken, you don't need to attempt to fix it. The next negative point is obviously free roaming cops. Now, we all know what the issue is here. We've covered it, we've spoken about it to death, but it's something I've had to add in because unfortunately it's still a problem. We do not have free roaming cops in the game. Now, I'm very aware that there are other Need for Speed titles that don't have free roaming cops, but the outpouring of concern from the Need for Speed community, the fact that that was one of the things that brought Most Wanted, which is seen as one of the best Need for Speed games, to life, the fact that the game prides itself on being an action open world adventure and running away from cops is actually full of action and full of adventure. The fact that they've not put that in the game is kind of like a conflict in decision making, if that makes sense. I would like to see that implemented into the game at some stage. Obviously, I know we've got the bait crates there, but it's not the same. You shouldn't be able to control when the cops come after you. They should be able to come after you when you least expect it. That's what generates excitement, and that's what generates some of the most golden memories when it comes to action-based situations. Okay, sticking on the theme of free roaming, the final negative point I want to talk about is the lack of free roaming multiplayer. Now, over the past few years, the drifting scene has got bigger and bigger and bigger, and the main reason for that is not just because of real life drift tournaments and real life drift events, but more so because of virtual drifting. So virtual drifting is obviously drifting done within video games, whether it be simulation based, whether it be arcade based. Everyone is posting videos, everybody is trying to beat everyone's top score, everybody is now part of different drifting based communities, whether it be with friends on their PSN or Xbox Live accounts, or just people they like to hang out with in the office, school, or whatever. 2Gay is a huge part of that. It brings 3 important elements together: cars, community, and drifting. And with no free roaming multiplayer open world element, it means you don't have the opportunity to combine those units together. There were times where I didn't want to do anything in Need for Speed 2015 other than just jump in the open world with 4 or 5 of my friends and literally just drift for like an hour or 2 in the evening. That was it. That's all I wanted to do. I can't do that in Payback. That is one of the reasons as to why people would keep on going back to the game. So please, Ghost, if you're listening, get it sorted out as quick as possible. And going into 2018, free roaming multiplayer is something I want to see in Need for Speed Payback, so I can take it off the bad list. Right, next game we're going to talk about is Gran Turismo Sport. Now, I have a very, very strange relationship with Gran Turismo Sport because of all the games that were coming out this year that are racing based, this is the one that I absolutely had no intention of playing. I said I would not play this game, and we all know the reason as to why, because there was no single player offline campaign mode. Well, they fixed that. I went out and bought a new PS4 and a copy of the game, and the first thing that struck me straight away was just how well polished the game is. From the graphics, the visuals, the smooth frame rate, the music used on the title scenes, even little things like, rather than calling it the car buying shop or the auction house, calling it Brand Central. And by that I'm referring to the area where you can go and buy new cars. It's just classy. It's Gran Turismo is what it is. The level of polishment doesn't just stop at the presentation of the menu system. It's got fully fledged animated pit stops upon which you are interactively part of as well. That for me is huge. I absolutely love that element, and it's an element that a lot of other games just don't seem to pay much attention to. They either don't have any animation whatsoever, or it's all animated but computer controlled, which is kind of like meh. The next thing that I'd like to talk about in relation to Gran Turismo Sport is the fact that it is playable with a controller and playable with a wheel. Now, I am not sending out any sly shots or any sly digs to any other games out there, okay, because we all know the situation with games like Project Cars 1 a few years ago. But what I'm most impressed about when it comes to GT Sport is the fact that I didn't have to do much fiddling. In fact, I didn't have to do any fiddling around whatsoever in the settings options. I was able to just plug my control pad in and just play the game as it is. Now, I'm very well aware in fact that it's a game aimed at being a simulation, so you're more likely to get a better experience when you drive with a fully fledged wheel, but then it would be silly to expect anything otherwise. But the point of the matter I'm getting at is, if you're a casual racing fan and you don't really have a 300 or 400 pound wheel set up, or it's something that maybe you just don't have the finances to buy, the good news is you can still enjoy Gran Turismo Sport on the regular DualShock 4 controller, okay? The final thing that I'm most impressed about is Gran Turismo Sport has completely free DLC. It's totally free. No season passes, no car packs or anything like that that need to be paid for. Once you've bought the game, all of the downloadable content that comes out post-game is free of charge. We've had the additional GT leagues, which some other game developers would have charged and called it an expansion pack. We've had extra cars added to the game, and there's more to come in 2018. And I think this is really good, because what it's going to do is just increase the longevity of the game. You're always going to be able to refresh the game. You're always going to be able to breathe new life into the actual format itself. And best of all, the people that have bought the game are not going to have to spend any more money or put any more hands in their pockets to enjoy those additional features. So I really do wish that this is a blueprint that other people, other manufacturers, other developers copy, because going forward, it's a win-win for everybody. Right, now on to the negative parts of Gran Turismo Sport. No dynamic weather. As good as the game is, and it is a good game, as beautiful as it looks, I'm sorry, you can't call yourself a racing simulator if you can't simulate the environment, okay? There is no such thing as going through a whole racing season without having to go through different types of variable weather conditions and whatnot. Your rivals, Project Cars 2, dynamic weather. Forza Motorsport 7, dynamic weather. This is an area which, to be quite honest with me, it bugs me quite a bit, because I like the unpredictability of rain. I like having to think on my feet. I like having to reconsider the type of tyres that I'm using for the race. I like having to consider what's going on with the weather when I'm racing. Those are all that happens in real life racing. That happens. I'm not going to sit here and say Gran Turismo Sport is not a simulation. It is. It's just that in this regard, in this aspect, it falls completely flat. I know part of the reason as to why they haven't implemented it is because they're so hell-bent on keep that 60 frames per second frame rate, but I would happily sacrifice 2 or 3, maybe even up to 5 frames per second if I could have dynamic weather. It just adds more to the game. Right, next up, lack of true upgrading ability. Now this for me is another bugbearer. In previous games, you had the ability to obviously upgrade and tune various parts of your car. You could start off in a absolutely atrocious Nissan Almera, which is a horrible car, and just take it all the way up to like 1,000 plus brake horsepower and take on Ferraris and things like that. And you know, there was so much you could do with your car, but in Gran Turismo Sport, it doesn't work like that. In terms of tuning, you can do quite a lot in terms of finessing your brake balance, your traction control, your camber, your toe in, toe out settings, your anti-roll bars and things like that, which is good. But in terms of actual upgrading, what you've got now is more like a skill tree sort of thing, whereby you get given these mileage points, and then you spend the mileage points on pushing the actual numerical value of your skill tree higher. So you start off on level 1 basically for example horsepower, and what you do is you take some of your mileage points and you apply them to that level 1, and that level 1 starts to get higher and higher and higher until it becomes level 2, and it's like, why are we doing this? What is this? I don't want to do this. I don't want it like that. So yeah, similar to Need For Speed Payback, I think Gran Turismo Sport just need to go back to the traditional way of upgrading things, because for me personally, I feel that it was just better. Okay, I'm a traditionalist at heart. Okay, moving on, we've now got Forza Motorsport 7. Now, I think the standout feature from this year's game is the fact that we have some sort of meaningful progression in the form of the Forza Drivers' Cup. So for anyone who doesn't know, the Forza Drivers' Cup is the ability to drive in different classes, modes and tournaments. You can drive various types of events like endurance races, drift events, events specifically set up for classic cars, muscle cars, whatever you want. And basically, as you progress, you gain points and you're obviously going for championship wins. You also unlock new content as well. So you unlock cars, you unlock driver gear. So not only has it actually got progression, but it's also got progression that leads to stuff that's actually tangible in terms of prizes, which is really, really good. I like that. You can race F1 style cars, trophy trucks. The list is pretty damn endless. So yeah, good on you for that. Customization. Now, I just touched on earlier on, you've got the ability to win driver gear. So with driver gear, obviously you've got your driver character and you can change things like his helmet, the color of the fireproof overalls that he wears, his gloves, his visor color. You can have him set up to be someone that's from like the 1950s, or one of those old school pigskin goggle type helmets. But it doesn't stop there, because out of all of the racing simulation games that have come out this year, this is the only one to my knowledge, I may be wrong here, if I'm wrong let me know in the comments, but it's the only one to my knowledge where you've got the ability to actually put on custom body kits. So for example, you can put a Rocket Bunny kit on the RX-7 and things like that. Now obviously Forza Motorsport 7 is trying to be a racing simulation, that's what it's aimed at, and I know that's not something that you would normally expect from a simulated based game, but it's a nice touch and it allows you to add some individuality to your car in question, so I'm happy about that. Now this year Forza have also introduced dynamic weather and dynamic time of day. Now this does come with a little asterisk next to it because it's not available on every single track. However, the feature is in the game, and I'm going to tell you now, the feature is beautiful. You get these fantastic overcast cloud situations where you start a race in sunny condition and then the clouds just gather really, really well. They get thick, they're dark in certain patches, you start seeing lightning, you start seeing thunder, puddles forming up on the pitch, racing lines disappearing, and you can actually feel the difference in the way in which the car is handling on the wet-based surfaces in comparison to that of dry surfaces. It's something that I wish they could actually give you the option to do on every single track, but the fact that it's in the game in some way, shape or form is something I'm definitely going to applaud them for and definitely give them a feather in their cap for that one. So well done, Forza. Right. Negative. So first and foremost, Forza Vista. It's not what it was. Now, Forza Vista, for those who don't know, back in the day, the Forza brand was very, very, very close to Top Gear in terms of the relationship between the two companies. You had Jeremy Clarkson, you had James May, and you had Richard Hammond, all giving their own narrative-based comments talking about the history of certain cars in the Forza Vista. So the Forza Vista is basically your chance to see your car in a flashy sense, loads of different photographic elements, loads of different sexy little slow-mo shots, with one of the Top Gear trio basically commenting about it and doing so in the way they do it best, with loads of wit, loads of humour and poking fun at each other.
Any idiot can build a supercar. Find a giant engine, glue a load of carbon fibre to the outside, give it a silly name and sell it for £1 million. No need to worry about boot space or comfort or whether the aircon works. But a car that's good to drive and that you can use every day, that's as challenging as building a fighter jet that's also easy to park in a multi-story. But when it goes right, well, you end up with something amazingly special. Something like the BMW M3, one of the very best fast cars of recent years. And don't forget Mazda's RX-7, the Toyota Supra, the original Skyline GTR, provided that is they haven't been improved by a spotty 17-year-old in a daft hat. These, I'm pleased to say, haven't.
Look very closely at this group and you will find the Audi Sport Quattro, a Ford and a Toyota. Otherwise, it's all Subaru Imprezas or Mitsubishi Evos. Literally thousands of them. Of course there are. This is the production rally group after all, and as we all know, only Subaru and Mitsubishi make rally cars. Or did make, at least. However, if you are over the age of 12, and before you all head off down the road in whichever vintage Impretz Evo takes your fancy, do take a steer in the Escort RS Cosworth, because without the Ford, there would be no Evos and Imprezzi. The Cosy invented the concept of a car as hooligan. Think about it. Largely unsophisticated 4-cylinder turbocharged engine? Check. Unjustified sense of invincibility inspiring 4-wheel drive? Yes. Leery aerodynamic appendages? Oh yes. Not that you care, what with all those Imprezzas and Evos to play with.
Muscle cars were once engineered to make ordinary cars go faster. Like men once went to the gym to make themselves go faster. These days, men who spend time in the gym and those shops where they sell milkshakes that make you look like Arnold Schwarzenegger are not doing it because they want to be better at sports, are they? They're doing it because they want their clothes to look too small for them. These muscle cars are more like modern muscle men, bulging in all the right places, but not necessarily any more sporting. The legendary Buick Regal GNX was at least NASCAR-derived and McLaren-engineered, but that didn't stop it having some interesting habits when driven hard. The 1993 Ford Mustang SVT Cobra, meanwhile, was a last-ditch attempt to bolt on some credibility and some speed to the generally forgettable third-generation Mustang. I'm not saying the cars are slow, they're not, or unexciting, they're not. It's just that, like that man with the power shake, they're maybe a bit embarrassing to be seen out with.
Now obviously it's not Forza's fault that they can't push that through the way they used to, because obviously we now know that Top Gear is totally different. Those three have left and they've gone off to do a totally different show, so I'm pretty certain there's some sort of legal or some sort of contractual based situation that prevents Forza from going off and working with them. That's my guess, but nevertheless it was a great addition to the game. And I'll talk about games trying to be individual, I'll talk about games creating a lane for themselves. That was Forza's lane. That was one of the things that made Forza famous, to be honest. That's one of those things that you see and you know it's Forza, and if Project Cars 2 or if Gran Turismo Sport tried to copy that, you would say that's Forza, if that makes sense. So it's a shame that we don't really have that element anymore. I hope that they can somehow get that back, because it's definitely much loved by me, and I think it's loved by quite a few of you guys as well. The next issue I want to talk about is the fact that the game feels too similar for some. Now I say for some. Now I didn't buy Forza Motorsport 6, nor did I buy Forza Motorsport 5. So I'm jumping from 4 straight to 7. So for me, because I've not played I did play the games, but because I've not owned the games for so long, it felt like a huge jump, if that makes sense, because I was just out of the loop. So I enjoyed everything. I thought, yo, this is wicked. But for people that have been, you know, deep fans of the series, that have bought Forza Motorsport 1, 2, 3, right the way up to 7 without missing a single disc, the complaint is that it just feels like Forza Motorsport 6 rehashed. Now, to some degree, I understand, because the driving mechanics feel very similar, and the overall feel of the game is pretty much the same as well, because I went back and played Forza Motorsport 6 so that I could just get a better understanding of where these complaints were coming from. And I think the problem that Turn 10 have got is that because they release these games so regularly, they're gonna have to work a lot harder in making sure there's a clear differential from game to game. That's the issue that they've got. As you know, Gran Turismo doesn't come out as regularly as a Forza title, so they can kind of get away with it, but nevertheless it's something that the guys at Turn 10 have got to figure out, because in a year like this where you've got all your rivals releasing games as well, if your game feels static, if it doesn't feel like it's moved forward to the masses, personally I feel it has, but to the masses, then you might find that you're going to lose a few sales, which is never good. Right, and the last negative point I want to talk about is loot boxes. Oh my goodness gracious me. Well, the reason is the repetitive nature of the rewards that you get. That is what irritates the heck out of me. There were situations where I would open up a loot box and I'm being given the same pair of gloves 3 or 4 times. That's irritating. That's really freaking annoying. If you're going to implement a situation whereby you're going to give me a random free gift, you better make damn sure that the mechanics of the game is such that you don't give me repetitive things that I can't sell, that I can't get rid of, that I have no use for. I don't want that. Right, the next issue I've got with these blasted loot boxes is the fact that for some stupid reason, and I need help with this, They thought it would be a good idea to lock standard features within the game behind this ridiculous world of randomized nonsense. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. When I booted up the game, one of the first things that I managed to get out of a loot box was something called a nighttime card, or a night card, modification card for that matter. I took a look at it and I thought, what's this? Yu-Gi-Oh? Okay, fair enough. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I found out that what that card entailed was giving me the opportunity to have my next race in nighttime conditions. And I thought, why can't I just select nighttime in the option menus? Who thought that would be a good idea? It's not. There's nothing good about that. Sticking with loot boxes, the next problem that I've got, and this for me supersedes everything. I've already explained the random nature of the items that come out of the box. If you're in a situation whereby you're sitting there and the box opens up and you get a whole load of stuff inside it that you don't want, or you've got no use for, or you're not particularly interested in, if you've got loads and loads of credits, which you probably would, because as I said, Forza is generous with the amounts of credits you get per race, what are you gonna do? You're gonna open another box. Guess what? You don't get what you want. You're gonna open another box. Do you realize the parallels between that and real life gambling? Just one last roll of the dice. Just one last game of poker. It's no different. What you're doing, Forza, what you're doing, Turn 10, is you are actually introducing the concept of institutionalized gambling. And the worrying thing about it is that Forza is a racing title, meaning that it doesn't have an 18-base certificate. It doesn't have like a mature certificate. It's open. It's a game that is open to all ages. Potentially, you are introducing young people to the concept of gambling, and that is the reason as to why I am asking you guys very nicely, do not put this in Forza Horizon 4. Don't do it, okay? Do not do it. Turn 10, in fact not Turn 10, Playground Games, because it's Playground who does the Horizon series, please do not implement loot boxes. Right, so last but not least, we now have Project Cars 2, the second installment. So, first and foremost, I think it's obvious where we've got to start in terms of positive points. Dynamic Track 3.0, a brilliant system which was implemented into the game to basically bring the track to life. So what do we mean when we talk about bring the track to life? Well, we know about dynamic weather. We know how obviously weather can change at various points within certain races. But one of the biggest elements, one of the biggest factors when it comes to real life racing is how this actually changes the way in which the track behaves, the way in which marbles get rubbed away, the way in which it doesn't rain on all parts of the track at the same time. Certain parts can be dry, certain parts can be wet. The way in which the rubber and the tyre flexes and changes its behaviour when going from dry to wet. The way in which you can lose grip on a corner if someone in front of you has actually just run off the track, kicked up some gravel and dust and brought that back onto the circuit. That is Dynamic Track 3.0. Basically what Project Cars 2 have done is or slightly mad have done I should say, is they have made the track a living and breathing organism. The detail that Project Cars have taken this live track system to is totally unparalleled. So for that, brilliant. Good job, guys. Next, track list. So we're still talking about tracks here, aren't we? Project Cars 2, hands down, has got the best selection of tracks of any racer that has been released in 2017. Period. Done. There's no other words to describe it. It has more tracks than Forza. It has more tracks than Gran Turismo Sport. It's got snow-based tracks, rallycross-based tracks. It's even got ice tracks. It's got everything that you need in terms of ensuring that you can take your car out and try it in various different types of conditions, various different types of road surfaces. There's no competitor as far as I'm concerned, and I can't give it any higher praise than that. VR support. Now, I don't own a VR kit of any shape or form. I do not have an Oculus Rift, I don't have an HTC Vive, I don't have any of that whatsoever. However, I have played Project Cars 2 in VR. I played it 3 times actually, and I tell you what, it was bloody brilliant. It was really, really good. What I like most is the fact that the actual menu system was super sampled, and you've actually got this ability to make selections using a feature known as gaze control. But most impressively and most importantly, it just added a very, very high level of immersion when in the car itself. We talk about simulation, we talk about trying to blur the lines between fiction and reality, and honestly, virtual reality is the next evolution of doing that. It was implemented well, it was executed well, and it works great. if you're someone who's into simulation-based races and you're looking for a VR experience, Project Cars 2 is going to tick your box, and it's going to tick your box with a big fat tick. And again, I can't give it any higher cosign than that. So once again, well done. Right, on to negative points. The most frustrating aspect in Project Cars 2 for me is setting the AI difficulty and keeping it set to a standard. Now, you've got the ability, just like in pretty much any game, to choose how difficult you want the AI to be. With Project Cars 2, rather than it being a static word such as easy, medium, hard or something like that, they go by a number. So the number goes from 0 to 100, I believe. Or it may even go higher than that, actually, I can't remember. Anyway, the point is, you choose your number, you choose your difficulty, and obviously you choose a difficulty which suits your level of ability. That's what you got to do, right? Okay, the problem is that, let's say, for example, you set the game at level 70 or 60, whatever you want. And then you took on a race and you done pretty well. It's a little bit difficult, but you done well. You would probably look at that and say, do you know what? I've probably got the game settings right in terms of the level. You then go and do another race, and the AI will absolutely smash you to pieces. It will destroy you. And then you think to yourself, okay, I need to turn the level down a bit. And then you do another race, and then you kill the AI. It's hard to get a balance, and I don't know why that is. At first, I thought it was just me. I thought it was just myself that had this issue. But once again, as I always do, I go and do research. I checked Reddit forums, I checked comments on different YouTubers' videos, and I saw that other people had this issue as well. I don't know what's wrong with the balancing of the AI in Project Cars 2. I don't know if it's a situation that's been fixed. If it has been fixed, then let me know in the comments section, because I've not played the game for probably about 2 months. But it's definitely something that's potentially going to be on this list for now, unless I hear it's been fixed. The next issue I've got is audio. Now, let's just get one thing straight. There is no such thing as a game with perfect audio. Every single racing game has got its own individual issues with audio. But the thing is that some do a better job of others. And I don't care what anyone says to me. You can hate all you want. You can be a fanboy all you want. I'm not either of that, okay? I don't pledge allegiance to any game whatsoever. I just enjoy playing games. What I will say is, as much as Forza Motorsport 7 gets criticised for not being as much of a simulation game, and even gets labelled with the stupid word simcade, which I hate, as much as it falls short in certain aspects in comparison to Gran Turismo Sport and Project Cars 2, what it does better than both of them is audio. It handles audio very well, both in-car and outside the car. Gran Turismo Sport has done a better job than other Gran Turismo titles, but then that's not hard, because previously audio in Gran Turismo was just appalling. Project Cars 2 has some work to do. It definitely has some work to do. Certain parts of the audio works well. So for example, when you hear the crackle and bang and the pops from the liquor flames from the exhaust, that works well. And some cars actually really do sound pretty good. But I found when I was driving the BMW M3, it just sounded very, 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 very plain. Now, I'm very, very aware that this is a non-turbocharged car, so it's not supposed to sound as exciting as other cars. But the E30 M3 is a car I know very, very well indeed. And I know it very well because my godbrother had an M3 E30, and my uncle also had an M3 E30. It's a car I've sat in and spent many hours in, so I know how that car is supposed to sound. And in Project Cars 2, it doesn't sound the way it sounds in real life. I'm sorry. And it's not the only car that's got that problem. I'm not going to go so far as to say that the sound on Project Cars 2 is bad, but what I will say is that when you've got certain parts of the game like the VR and also like the extensive track list, both held to such an extremely high level where they've done extremely well, you can't put the audio of the game in that same bracket. You just can't. You know, you got to call it what it is. So that's something that I hope that they can fix with forthcoming patches. And again, if it is something they fix with a patch, then let me know. Last but not least, the final issue I had with Project Cars 2 is the career mode. Now, we've already spoken about the career mode in games like Forza Motorsport 7 and the fact that you unlock things and the sheer breadth of different variety of activities that you can undertake. With Project Cars 2, I can't put my finger on it, but it seems a bit hollow. I don't know what it is. There's something missing from the career mode and I can't put my finger on it, but whatever it is, it doesn't grip you, if that makes sense. It's not something whereby you sit there and say, do you know what? I want to go through this all night. I want to continue to play this because I'm going to unlock, well, yeah. I can't put my finger on it. I don't know if this is just me. Let me know in the comments what you think if you're someone that's been playing the single player career mode. I find that there's more fun in Project Cars 2 when you play online, to be quite honest with you. I'll tell you what it feels like. It feels like that, a career mode. As in, it doesn't feel like a Project Cars 2 career mode, it just feels generic. It feels like you could have taken that same career mode and dropped it in pretty much any game, but what Project Cars have failed to do is put a signature accent behind it, if that makes sense. If you look at GT Sport, you've got the GT leagues, and in the GT leagues, you've got like the Sunday Cup, you've got the Clubman Cup, you know, you've got the front wheel drive challenge. These are all things that you know are part of a Gran Turismo single player campaign or career mode. Signature icons, if you will. Forza have started doing that with their unlockables and the ability to collect cars as a result of participating well. I'm fully aware that those are two gaming franchises that have both released loads and loads and loads and loads of games. When it comes to Project Cars 2, this is only their second installment. I'm hoping for the next game they do something to kind of push the campaign further forward and just give it its own character, give it its own personality, so that it brings the whole package to life just a little bit better. And that's pretty much it, guys. So this was an extremely long video, a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, but this is the reason why I chose to not cover games which I didn't play, because it would have been an hour or 2 hours or even 2019 by the time this thing finished. As always, I'm massively interested in knowing what your thoughts are on all the games that I spoke about, including games I didn't even speak about. What racing games did you buy this year? What games are you enjoying most? What games upset you? What games are you looking for improvements going on into 2018? But irrespective of what I've said, both negative and positive, I think 2017 has been a really good year for us racing fans. In some respects, some will say that we didn't get the quality that we may have wanted, but we got something else, which was choice, and it's rare that you have so many different racing games released in 1 year. I'm used to us getting like maybe 1 or 2 decent titles a year and that's it. So all in all, I think it's been a decent year for racing. And that's pretty much it. If it's your first time around here, I wish you a BOURNE welcome. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button for more opinion-based videos. You should be seeing on your screen now a whole load of different thumbnails popping up. These are different opinion-based videos that I've done throughout the year. For those of you who may not have seen any, for those of you that might be landing here for the first time, feel free to check out the channel and give them a little bit of a view. But in the meantime, I'll see you when the next video comes out. Peace. Moving into 2018, I'm going to be implementing something to the channel which I've not actually done in its whole 2-year history, and that's a release schedule. Moving into January 2018, I'll be releasing 3 videos per week every single week, and that's a guarantee, as long as my arm or leg or even head doesn't fall off. Now, I'm very aware that the audience that I've got is very, very diverse. Those of you who tune into my videos are a mixture of simulation-based fans, a mixture of open-world arcade adventure-based racing fans, and also a mixture of retro-based fans. So, Gran Turismo Sport is going to be the simulation of choice that I play, as long as there's still interest in it, as long as you guys are still watching it. I've played Forza Motorsport 7, I've played Project Cars 2, and Gran Turismo Sport is the title that seems to get the most love from you guys when I put content out, so we're going to stick with that. Need for Speed Payback is a game that, if you're following my channel before the game was even launched, you'll know that I've put out a shit ton of videos for it. I've probably put out between 10 to 20 videos talking about concepts, talking about news, storyline drops, information, opinion, all before the game was even put out. And I got to the stage where when the game did come out, I was already exhausted. So if you noticed, I've taken a little bit of a break from it, but don't worry, the game will be coming back to the channel. We still have unfinished business with the story campaign mode. That is going to be the second game on a weekly basis that I'm going to be releasing. The final game is going to be one for those of you who are into retro gaming. So I'm talking about games that came out around the last generation of consoles, the Xbox 360, the PS3, and before that. Now, what I did on Christmas Day was I uploaded a special one-off edition of Juiced 2. And it did pretty well. As you can see, it got just under 2,000 views, which for my channel is actually not too bad. But most importantly, I put a question out during that video and I asked you, if you want to see another episode of Juice 2, if you want me to turn this into a playthrough, let me know by smacking the like button. And the response was fantastic. If you look at the ratios of likes to dislikes, that told me straight away, okay, brilliant, this is what you guys want to see. Then I put out another Juice 2 video and it did shocking, it didn't even make 1,000 views. So what I'm going to do now is, for the third video that I'm going to be putting out on a weekly basis, the retro video, the classic gaming video, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to give the choice over to you. You are going to pick what you want me to play, because the one thing about being a content creator is a lot of you guys sometimes, maybe you forget, maybe you don't know, but we spend a hell of a lot of time and effort making these videos through the gameplay, the capturing, the editing, the rendering of the footage, the uploading, the sharing of the content, the creation of the thumbnail. It's quite a big job, do you know what I mean? So I want to be in a situation where if I'm putting all that effort in, it's something that you guys actually want to watch, if that makes sense. And that's the reason why I'm giving you guys the power to pick. So what I've done is I've actually gone out and bought a whole load of classic based racing games, and I'm going to read out the list to you as to what I have. So here's the list. We have Driver San Francisco, Driver Parallel Lines, Test Drive Unlimited 2, Street Racing Syndicate, Burnout Paradise, the Ultimate Box Collection, Crash Time 3, or Split Second. Now there is an alternative option, and the alternative option is follows. If you really want me to, I will play one of the classic Need for Speed titles. Anyone out of Most Wanted, Carbon, The Run, or Undercover. But if that's what you want, then I'm going to do that instead of Payback, because what I don't want to do is run two separate Need for Speed playthroughs at the same time. I just feel that's just overkill. What I'm going to do is each and every one of those games I'm going to leave as a separate individual comment in the comments section below. All I ask is for you to put a thumbs up on what you want me to play, okay? Now, before you go out and make your vote, please think very, very carefully. Just ask yourself one question. The game that I'm voting for, is it something whereby I'm going to want to see 10, 15, 20 episodes? Is it a game that's going to feel quite repetitious to the point where I'm going to get bored? And by I, I'm talking about you guys. In my head, I already know what the most suitable game to play is. I already know, but I don't want to sway the vote. I want to leave this completely open to you guys, open to the floor. So as I said, all you got to do is put a thumbs up next to the game you want to see me play. And obviously, the game that gets the most votes will be the third game that I release on a weekly basis, and it will cover us on the classic retro side of things. And that's pretty much it. Take it easy. Peace.